If I believe there's a reason for this pain I'm going through, if I believe that leaving me was all that you could do, if I believe that I can feel you by my side, I'll make it through the night. If I believe that time will teach me how to find my way, if I believe that broken hearts grow stronger every day, if I believe that now you're dancing across the sky, I just might get by. If I believe that memories won't always hurt this much, if I believe that I will see your face again, I can wait till then.
Good evening, Somerville. Welcome to the Somerville Overcoming Addiction show. My name is Joanne, and tonight's guest is Domenic Esposito. And the reason why I had you come tonight is because of your phenomenal spoon.
Oh, thank you.
Really. You know, like I said earlier to you, that I am an art, you know, I love to draw and paint, and it really hit me when I saw that. And I wanted to know more about you and why you made an 800-pound spoon. So why don't you give us a little input on
Okay.
why you did that?
Well, thanks, Joanne. It's great being here, and you know, I love Somerville. I actually got some family here, out here as well. Even though I grew up in the city of Boston. Hi, Laura. Hi, Joe. Sorry, I'm a little quick hello. But anyways, why the spoon? So the inspiration really for the spoon was my brother Danny and his battle with an opioid addiction. Close to 12 years now. It's something that it's really affected everybody in the family, not just him, unfortunately, but you know, my parents and everybody else that's been involved, sort of this support network. And that's not too dissimilar to what we've heard with a lot of parents out there, that you know, it's just this constant battle that's not just with the affected or the afflicted, but also the, you know, the family as a whole. So
Absolutely, it's a family disease.
yes, yes.
I've been through it myself.
Yeah, I'm sorry to. I know we sort of shared a little bit of kind of war stories right before the program, but yeah, that was the inspiration. Was really my brother. The spoon itself is it's a dark symbol for me. It's not just a dark symbol for me, but also a lot of parents out there who found that spoon. And I can remember sort of the moments of my mom calling me in this sort of panicked voice that she had found another burnt spoon in the house. This was really about 6 or 7 years ago, kind of at the peak of my brother's addiction, and so she'd call me in this panicked, you know, kind of broken English voice. She'd found another spoon, and so for me that was like a moment of like kind of, you know, the air just gets kind of sucked out of your lungs, and here it is. We're starting all over again. It's this moment of relapse, and I think you get a little more accustomed to it. It's not something that, you know, you totally get used to, but you know, as you know, it's a process of it's a back and forth process, right? So it's, you know, you have moments where everything is going well, and then this relapse is part of recovery, right? And on average, I think the statistics are that someone, you know, you relapse about 10 or 12 times, and that's kind of that moment. And so this spoon it's a dark symbol, and it just brings back those sort of negative memories for me.
Actually, it's a beautiful spoon. I really.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was a lot of work putting that thing together. We did it in roughly about 6 weeks, so it involved a lot of grinding, a lot of welding, just a lot of work in general in the shop. So, and we did it sort of I would sort of say kind of the old-fashioned way. It was really kind of fabricated, as you would kind of fabricate a car fender or a gas tank for a motorcycle. We use this thing called an English wheel, and people who fabricate out there know what these things are. And the spoon is so big that we actually had 3 people at one point working this, you know, this metal through this English wheel that kind of creates that bend and curves. And you know, I'm proud of it. You know,
Of course, you should be. It's beautiful. And even though it's a dark symbol, it really hits the point of addiction. I mean, I think that, like I said to you earlier, that if all of us that are in the network, whether recovery coaches or there's a lot of parents, like we have mutual friends like Maureen Cavanaugh, who's written the book, If You Love Me.
If You Love Me, that's right.
Right, and I never really knew what that meant until after she came on the show. She was here about a month ago, and she was talking about the book when she said that her daughter was on the floor, and she said, if you love me, let me go.
Yeah.
And there's just no way you will let go of your family.
No, it's a disease that just it kind of takes over your you know, it takes over the family, and it takes over everything, your thoughts, and every moment of your life. You're trying to spend it trying to help you know, someone in your family that's, you know, at times there's this sense of real hopelessness. Like, what am I doing? You know, how am I going to control this? And that's also part of having gone through it with my brother for so long. It's also this sense of reality that, you know, a lot of parents and people, you get kind of caught up in it, and it's sort of sometimes you've got to step back and say, you know what, I can't make miracles happen, right? You know, I can only so much I can do. I can help out here and there, and you've got to realize that, you know, it's not your fault, no. And you need to sort of, you know, you need to sort of, you know, set your expectations and also think about your own health, right? And that's what a lot of parents, unfortunately, sometimes they put their own health to the side.
Right. Or like myself, it's like Frankie's addiction. He was 21 when he had his motorcycle accident, so he fought an addiction and he succumbed to addiction at 32. And for 11 years, it's like every day you worried. You never knew if you were going to get that phone call or you were going to find them. You know, you live through that day on a day-to-day basis. So you forget to live.
Yeah, yeah.
You forget to have a good time. You forget to, you know, to travel or, you know, I remember taking my children to Disney World and having a great time when they were younger. And then all of a sudden you get to this point in your life where the only thing they're worried about is when's the next fix.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Frankie had gone through, he worked for the post office, so he never wanted anybody to know that he had a problem.
Yeah.
So he went through my, I worked for Verizon at the time, so I had an EPA program and EAP program. So I would have him go and talk to people in Verizon to be able to help him. And then at one point he asked me to actually section him.
Wow.
You know, because he knew that a week or he had surpassed the amount of time that the insurance company would give him services. So he asked me to do that. But in the end, it's like he was trying to fight to get out of the car and not go.
Yeah.
And it's because he thought about the withdrawal and the pain that occurred with it. And he did go to a place for a month down in Brockton. It was a new facility for men, and it had just opened. But you know, it was really, really tough for him as well as it was tough for me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
it's a difficult, the entire process. It's so hard. It's so hard on everybody. It really is.
I deal with a lot of mothers, and I see their pain. You know, and they say, well, does it ever get easy? I mean, it's been 9 years. And I'll tell you, last week was really, really tough. You know, I think of my son every day, but
the holidays are tough.
In general. The music, or you know, since he was a postal worker, you see someone walking down the street
it just sets
that
off
might have his walk, you know, and it's still tough no matter what. I just miss my son, and I'd love to have him here.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's just no way that that's going to happen. So, what can you tell us that your next step is?
Yeah, let me spend a little bit. I kind of spoke a little bit about the spoon. So the next step, but let me tell you a little bit about why we did, why Purdue Pharma in the first place. Because I think there's also this sort of a little bit of people. I actually don't know that everybody is sort of out there is really familiar with just how bad the situation is with the big pharma in general, and not just Purdue Pharmaceutical. So I talked a little bit about why the spoon. The spoon was really an outcry for me of like trying to raise awareness, but it's also a symbol of accountability, and sort of the accountability we're saying is that the architects behind the opioid epidemic, whether it's big pharma, it could be politicians, it could be doctors, it could be distributors, right? They need to be held accountable for their role in perpetrating this epidemic, right?
Absolutely.
And the reason why the spoon is in front of Purdue Pharma and not some other symbol, I mean, it could be another symbol, but for the most part, 80% of, and if you speak to a lot of substance use disorder, people who are in that have had this disease, 80% of them will have started with a synthetic opioid or a prescription opioid, right? So that's the link here, because a lot of people think, oh, this stuff just kind of happens as people on the streets. It's not so, right? They all start off with whether it's prescription or an opioid that's on the street, not necessarily heroin, right? Heroin is sort of like the last phase of it because these drugs are so expensive, right? And then you get cut off from your doctor and everything else that sort of goes on with it. And heroin is really the last phase, and that's really the kind of the final phase, right? So that's why the spoon, right? But it's not only used to cook heroin, it's also used to cook synthetic opioids as well, right? So that's the link there is that spoon with Big Pharma and bringing it to them was part of the act. So going forward, we're making new ones. We haven't actually disclosed when or where or when we're gonna do this, but they are coming, and I would anticipate relatively soon we'll be doing this again with another architect, right? So it's not so much just Purdue now, but the spoon itself, the Purdue drop, actually added quite a bit of put Purdue really on the map. In fact, like the day that week we dropped the spoon, if you Googled Purdue, not even spoon, you would get the spoon would come up. So that's pretty amazing that if you Google a company that you would get the spoon image up there. It's no longer the case because there's been more and more searches, but anyways, it is, it inspired also a lot of marches, and that's what, Joanna and I met. It was actually at a march, August 17th, that was put on by Team Sharing in front of Purdue Pharmaceutical that we both sort of participated in. But the inspiration, and we can speak to Cheryl, but was really kind of what the actions that we had done to actually bring accountability to the doorsteps of Purdue Pharmaceutical. There was another one, August 31st, put on by some of the groups and nonprofits down in Stamford area, as well as Connecticut, as far as Hartford. And then there's been more rallies that we've both have participated in.
Right. Well, we did have, it's interesting because the one on the August 31st at the Boston Common.
Boston Common, yeah.
I had said to Mike, Doug, and I said, you know what, we need to have more people.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the more people and the more visibility, maybe that, because when you turn around, you see Chronicle has stories on opioids. It's all 5 minutes, and that's it.
That's
and
it,
like
and it goes away.
People just turn the channel.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if you have a big event, and so that people can be more aware of the epidemic and how many people are dying every day.
Yeah. That's also, as part of our mission is really to kind of raise this notion of awareness out there, right? And that's also what we're doing with our movement. And in some sense, and you can probably speak to this too, Joanne, is we sort of like, if you're part of the epidemic, you kind of live in this bubble, and everybody that you speak to knows a lot about it. But then when you step outside of that bubble, like people on the street who are not affected by it, right? They don't know a lot about it until they get, and then then you sort of get educated, right? And what I've started doing, and what I try to tell people, especially a lot of the places I speak, is that let's try to reach people outside of this sort of bubble, right? So like, what I'll do is I'll go to lunch or see a friend for coffee, and I'll tell them all about what I'm doing. And then, in fact, that March, the August 31st one, in the comments, I had about half a dozen people who had nothing to do with the opioid. Like, they were just friends that were, that had sort of talked about it, and they were, they went in there completely educated now about what's going on. And I think that's what we need to do, is reach the people outside of the epidemic. And that's similar to what happened, and the parallels are very close to the AIDS epidemic, right? Mm-hmm. The AIDS epidemic took years before we actually started seeing the fruits of change. And once we started seeing, people coming out of and listening to them, so you had, issues around, you had, the tapestry, the large tapestry, right? You had songs and musicians, and everything sort of it started really reaching, but that took years, right? And I think that's, we're in sort of the first inning, although it feels like it's been forever with this epidemic in terms of the deaths. But in terms of public awareness, I don't think we're even close to where we need to be.
Absolutely not.
So that's, go ahead, sorry.
No, really, I look at it and I say we still have, the stigma is still attached to it. And that's really sad, because we have even billionaires that have lost their children. No matter how much money they had, they couldn't save their lives. Right. And the vision of what someone with addiction looks like is usually someone in the streets. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like my son. Yeah. I always said that he would make something of himself, but unfortunately, he was a comedian. He loved to draw plans. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, we had Navigator on, and I said I had some music. I had some lyrics that were my son's, and where he was a rapper, I would like him to put his words to
in
music.
there. That's right.
So, but that was Frankie. Frankie was a loving, caring person that most people would never think that he had an issue.
Yeah.
You know, he tried to make people laugh, and and they all loved him.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you know, his own, and I always say his own stigma, like probably your brother's stigma, they already have an issue with what they're doing. They had no intentions of becoming addicted.
No.
And they don't need someone else, you know, stigma to be added to their own.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and so we need to work more on that issue.
Yeah.
You know,
no, it really is. It's important to sort of reach, and this sort of these public awareness campaigns are really important. You know, so we are trying to raise sort of this awareness out there, but it's not just awareness, but we think through accountability and actually making sure that those responsible for flooding the markets with a lot of these drugs is going to help raise the awareness as well, right? Because I think at the end of the day, I mean, this is a kind of a crazy analogy, but you know, if you think about, you know, Big Pharma and what they've done to perpetrate this, right? I mean, you know, we need to sort of chop the head off the snake, right? I know that sounds kind of crazy and graphic, but, you know, if you chop the head off the snake, then the rest of it sort of falls apart. And all those tentacles, or the chop the head off some sort of, you know, monster like an octopus or something, because all the tentacles sort of fall off, and those tentacles really are politicians, distribution company, lobbyists, right? And all that sort of network, that falls apart. So the supply of these drugs onto the market really needs to sort of dissipate, and that's really what we're after, is really trying to lower that supply by literally cutting the head off the snake, right? You know.
Oh, you're absolutely right. When did the campaign about pain? What is your pain level?
Yeah, that was 19.
Didn't that happen around the time that the OxyContin was actually made? I mean, you talk about 2004 is when. First of all, my son Frankie had his accident, like I think in 1999.
Yes.
So, and they already had been making OxyContin, and then going and having the doctors, you know, bringing the doctors in to give out,
That's
to
right.
try the drug, and we'll give you a trip to Florida or
That's
whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, this whole campaign really started about 1995 for Purdue Pharmaceutical. It really was the architect. They kind of had free will for the first 2 years, right? So what they did is they created this fifth vital sign, right? And it's really kind of a marketing ploy by them. So you have this fifth vital sign, and you can argue all day you want, because there's a whole generation now of doctors who have been brought up to think about it this way, right? And so basically their slogan is pain is inhumane, right? So what did we do as a society before 1995, right? OxyContins didn't exist. They existed basically in some sort of form, but solely for patients, cancer dying patients who were in hospice, right? And so what did we do? So you got your wisdom tooth pulled out. What do? You take a Tylenol or an Advil or something, right? You don't get prescribed OxyContin, right? You sprain your ankle. What do? You put your ankle up for 2 days, right? But there's this sort of notion that everybody's wants to be active and back on the field, right? So you take an OxyContin and then you can play the next day, right? And that's sort of the mentality that they perpetrated via marketing, really, because they funded, and a lot of this has been written about in books, but we've also have our own research staff as well with our movement that's brought it all to the forefront in actually connecting these pieces of the web that they've created, right? So you have the American Pain Society and all these other societies that are basically funded by Purdue Pharma and Big Pharma, right? These lobbyist-type organizations actually give advice to the JCHO and who sets treatment advice, and then the FDA, and then they've gone as far as actually even kind of getting into the DEA by changing bills, handicapping the DEA not too, just as fact 2 years ago. So they've created this massive, back to your point, marketing campaign and created this web of influence out there that's allowed them to continue making billions and billions of dollars at the expense of our loved ones, right?
14 billion.
That's what their net worth is right now for the Sackler family, their family that owns it. But they've made it is not just Purdue. There's a lot of other companies involved in this as well. They were effectively the architects of this, and that's really kind of what we're trying to do with this movement is really expose that web of influence that they've had. And
between you and Maura Healey and her going with her lawsuit and going after individuals as well as companies.
That's right.
Made her quite remarkable.
Yeah, she's pretty impressive. I mean, the lawsuit, and I spent 6 weeks putting that spoon together. They spent 3 years on that lawsuit preparing for it. I mean, it's just amazing what they've been able to do, and it's the strongest lawsuit in the nation. They've been able to sort of tie the deaths, 670 deaths or 72 deaths, I don't remember the exact number, in Massachusetts, to doctor visits and sales visits by Purdue Pharmaceutical, right? So there's the link, right? It's pushing these opioids on doctors, not paying attention to, if patients should be on them or not, right? So, and actually leading to deaths, right? And her investigation is actually has 16 members of the executive members of Purdue are being called upon as criminals, right? So now you have a situation where they're actually being named in civil lawsuits, right? So effectively what they've done is, it's a legal term, but they've pierced the corporate veil, right? Because corporations as a whole are protected, right? And so by going after the individuals who've allowed this to happen at the board, they have the potential to actually get these guys in jail or some large lawsuits for the individuals. So that's the big difference between that lawsuit and the other thousands that are out there. And maybe, I'm not sure, I don't want to take over but we can talk a little bit about the sort of current status of what the lawsuits look like out there. So a lot of these lawsuits have been grouped into what they're calling multi-district lawsuits, right? So they've put them all together. They're all being heard by one single judge in Ohio, right, Judge Polster.
Mm-hmm.
So
wasn't there a gag order also?
Yeah. So none of the cases that are being discussed there can actually be discussed outside of that court case. Mm-hmm. So we have there's not a lot of information coming out of this, right? And what we're worried about is that these MDLs, Massachusetts is not participating in the MDL, nor is the state of Ohio, and you can see it yesterday with Mike Moore on 60 Minutes. That was an incredible episode because he's, just like Maura Healey, has stepped out of the MDLs, right? There's other smaller, New York City, I think, is not participating in the MDLs. So these MDLs, to us, it's a way for Purdue and Big Pharma to sort of settle this, right? And similar to what we had in 2007, where there was one lawsuit, right, and they settled for $634 million. 3 executives were found guilty. Nobody did jail time, right? It was a pay-to-play attitude, right? So that's incredible. Like, you've got enough money to pay for it. You pay, and you get to do whatever you want, right? So they paid $672 million, and they've made billions and billions of dollars after that. Big deal, right? And we're still, not only that, since 2007, they actually stepped on the accelerator, right? You had all the pill mills and excess supply of OxyContin on the streets. And how do they make it on the streets? And their whole claim is like, we're not prescribing these, the doctors are. But there's no notion of actually monitoring them, right? It's incredible that a distributor or a manufacturer would not monitor what they're actually selling, right? And there has to be. It's not just morally wrong; it's legally. Right, they should know where these drugs are going, right?
Absolutely.
Right, and check who's actually prescribing them, right? Right, and so the MDLs have the risk of being another one of these lawsuits that's settled, right? And it's for money, and they get to kind of walk away with it. And I think we're starting to see some people step out of that kind of notion of actually being part of the MDL. So it's all incredibly complicated, but at the end of the day, if you put all these cases together, Purdue can use its lobbying effort to make sure that there's only one settlement, right? And I think it's a stronger case if we states like Massachusetts, Ohio, actually step out of them and go after them criminally and civilly and under civil lawsuits on their own merits, right? And they do. They have their own merits based on, at least what we're seeing here in Massachusetts in terms of the rigidity of their cases.
So they'll be definitely worried if they have more than one case. Like I said, if
Exactly.
you lump it all together, it's all over
Yeah.
at the end. No. I think that it's
Yeah.
best for everybody to step out.
And settle. Step out and not settle
Right.
in the MDL. Exactly.
Because, like I said, no matter how much money that they're going to be paying, and so it's still not going to bring my son back.
No.
And they have blood in their hands. All these people that have lost their children, how could they even live a normal life, knowing that they've caused all these deaths?
Yeah.
And isn't it true that they knew that these pills were addictive?
They did.
And then they still sold it, and then they're still making more drugs.
Yeah, that are even stronger. So.
Like I said,
Yeah.
that drug that was just made that was 100 times more powerful than morphine. Why do they need that?
Yeah.
Like I said,
What's the use?
Originally, OxyContin was made for people that were dying of cancer, to be able to help them in the last days of their life.
Yeah.
Be comfortable before they die.
Yeah.
Not to give it to someone 21 years old that has a motorcycle accident.
No, exactly.
And then now he has to fight the rest of his life with an addiction.
Yeah.
If they survive.
Yeah.
My son didn't survive.
Yeah.
And it's totally amazing that they get away with it. Like in 2015, it was my first time going down to Washington, D.C. for a rally. And it was a fed-up rally, and it was also Greg Williams had Face the Addiction.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 2-day event. And not one TV station covered it.
That's right.
Not one newspaper article was ever written about it. And yet there were hundreds of thousands of people that were at the mall at an event with the general surgeon was on there speaking on live feed. Obama.
Yeah.
Steven Tyler was there talking about his recovery, and so was Sheryl Crow. There were a lot of people there, but nobody knew that it was taking place.
Yeah.
And I think that basically the same thing happened with the Boston Common.
Yeah.
A lot of times, a lot of it was not covered by the newspapers and the TV channels, and it's why. We have a huge epidemic. There's no longer an epidemic, it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
And they need to, like you said, they need to take ownership
Yeah.
to what they've done.
I think I don't have answers to those questions. I don't know why. I mean, I feel like sometimes it's this, whether it's a stigma, I'm not sure what it is, why there's not more awareness in this country about what's going on. I mean, I don't know. The numbers are so crazy. I can do my part, by, dropping more spoons, raising awareness that way, going national, even international. But it's a difficult, it's incredible. And I don't know, Joanne, I'm not sure what it is, why that's the case. I mean, I would ask people out there who are listening to take it upon themselves to to join in some of these rallies and join in some of the.
Not only that, call up your senators, call up local government. Tell them how you feel about addiction. A lot of times people lose their family members or they're right in the middle of addiction and they're ashamed. And they shouldn't be ashamed because this was created by all these drug companies.
Corporate greed. That's all it is. It's corporate greed.
Corporate greed.
It's it. I mean, it's nothing more than that. And the fact that, a corporation with billions of dollars can basically get away with anything they want, what kind of message does that send for another corporation, right? So now, that's what's so important of getting some of these guys in jail, right? So if you're a board and you have a lawsuit coming to you, you pay the lawsuit and then you move on. What do you care, right? I mean, you're a board member, right?
Right.
But if you're a board member and there's a potential for you to go to jail, your thought process in terms of approving or pushing a new drug is going to be a lot more different because your ass is on the line.
Absolutely.
So
2015, let me go back to that. The FDA just approved OxyContin for 11-year-olds.
yeah, no, it's crazy.
And when the FDA got up to speak, we actually drowned them out. They didn't even get a chance to talk because we just kept chanting,
Yeah,
FDA, why are you killing our kids today?
yeah,
You know, and hopefully that person that was up there should have felt something.
mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of people dying every day, and how could there not be any sincere feelings about?
Yeah, no, and it's not even, it's, again, it goes kind of back to this, when I was kind of alluding to, is this web of influence, right, that they have. And you'd be surprised how much money and how they spread it everywhere, more than you think, right? I mean, the former head of the FDA, Dr. Wright, who approved in 1995 the OxyContin, was responsible for, you know where he went to work a year later? Guess. Purdue Pharma. I mean, isn't that incredible? What's the conflict of interest here? Don't they have any moral, like, ethics? I mean,
possibly not.
You know, it.
When it comes to money,
And it's all, and that's all it is. It's corporate greed. And you want to sit here, and, you know, I'm going to sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, but that's not the case. I mean, you can track all the money. You can track it. You can track them giving money to this society and that lobbyist group and getting things passed. I'll tell you one bill that was passed in 2016 was the Marino bill and HR 471. What that bill basically was kind of passed off on some sort of a way for people to make sure that they were giving for chronic pain use medication, and it wasn't being taken away from them. So it was a way to disguise that. What it effectively did, it handicapped the DEA from going after distributors, right? Because the DEA previously, all they had to prove is that they had some sort of, you know, a level 1, Schedule 1 drug that they were selling illicitly. So now you had to prove, the DEA had to prove that it caused, not just, you know, it caused death, not imminent cause of death, but it actually caused death. So that level of proof made it very difficult for this DEA to go in and actually close some of these places down, right? That was passed in 2016. Pharma tried for 2 years, from 2014, 15, and then 16. They finally got it passed. Then, to add insult to injury, President Trump nominates Tom Marino as his drug czar in September 2017, right? That only lasted about, you know, a couple of weeks because, you know, some of the advocates and activists out there actually came out and you know, figured it out, what was happening here. So, you know, it's just incredible, Joanne, that you had, you know, effectively our government putting in charge of our entire nation's drug policy. The guy who was in, you know, it's basically like, you know, and I know one of the senators kind of quoted this, but it's putting the wolf in charge of the hen house, right? I mean, isn't that crazy?
It is incredible.
But your voices matter, right? Because that voice of reason that happened was a huge outcry by a lot of these nonprofits dealing with this right now, got him removed within a few weeks, right? So
you have to speak up.
You do, and you know, you sort of let it happen. You let it happen, and then, you know, who's to blame? It's us, right? We sort of let it happen, right?
Right.
You know, if we had, you know, spoken up and gotten organized, and it is hard to organize because you're sort of war. You know, you're a veteran, right? I mean, the last thing you want to do is go back out and fight. You're kind of like, you know, I always call.
You get worn out.
Yeah, you're worn out, right? It's like a boxer. Like you're in a boxing match for the first, you know, 10 rounds. You get knocked down 3 times, and then that 4th time, you're not going to get up, right? You just, you know, it's how many times can you get up to do this battle and in constant loss, right?
I've been doing it for 9 years.
Yeah, and it's remarkable, but that's a lot of families out there that have been dealing with this like forever, and they're beat up. They're beat up, and they're looking for hope and help. And it's unfortunate. You know, we're going to continue doing what we can But it's just us with a spoon, right? So.
I like that spoon. No, we're going to do fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be more awareness about what's going on out there. There's just too many people dying, and you know what? And it's out there. 72,000 people died last year.
Yeah.
How many a day? In Massachusetts, they say 5 a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the last one I heard, it's like what they're saying is like a plane crash a day, right? So you have a plane crash that happens, it makes the news for like weeks and months, and here we are every day. The average age is 27 years old. A plane crash full of 27-year-olds dies a day, right? I mean, that's pretty remarkable, right? I mean, and it's so unfortunate and so sad, and I don't even know what else to sort of.
It was funny. It was funny but sad at the same. One day I went to a meeting, Cambridge Health Alliance, and of course the city of Somerville always likes to show statistics.
Yeah, statistics.
So I'm sitting there with a few other people. Actually, one of them is an alderman now, and people from CHA that are a part of their staff. And they were talking about statistics since 2008, and they go all the way up to 2016. Well, in 2009, there was only a number 1.
Yeah.
And that's the year my son died.
Yes.
So being a mother and sitting there and looking at the statistics, and there's a number 1, that had to be my son.
Yeah.
He had a name.
Yeah.
He had a face, and that's why when with these people from Team Sharing, we all have pictures of our children.
Yeah, yeah.
We want them all to see our losses.
That's right, yeah.
And as a matter of fact, when we were in Washington, I was walking down, showing all the pictures and talking. It was shared, and viewed by over 2,200 people within 8 hours. But my message was, if I'm not mistaken, at that time we heard that Purdue had made an antidote for the opioid. And I'm saying, why should they make any money off the antidote?
That's right.
For something they created.
Yeah.
So they should actually give it away.
Give it away, yeah. Give away the patent, have somebody
try
else
to make
manufacture.
money.
Yeah.
It's not going to help my son because he's gone.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of people out there suffering every day with addiction.
Yeah.
Give it away.
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll never see that happen.
No, and it was indirectly Purdue, but it was Rhodes Technology that is a subsidiary of Purdue, and that's effectively how they made all their generic drugs. And they patented this new version of it was a Suboxone variation that they had patented, and just incredible. Just incredible that they have the gall to actually do that. I mean,
make more money now,
Yeah.
right? Okay, we already made $14 billion off of you. Now let's.
The best quote I heard on the whole thing was by Nan Golden. She's also a photographer and very well-known photographer who's had her own personal battles with an opioid addiction, and is now leading a huge organization called PAIN, P-A-I-N. I can't remember exactly the acronym, but basically they're trying to get the Sacklers out of museums, right? And they're holding rallies all over big museums.
Yeah, that's where I was, out in front of the Sackler Gallery in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. So she's like, and she wrote a whole article on this, and she said, what's next? Why don't they just go out and patent funeral parlors as well? I mean, it's just crazy. It's absolutely nuts, and there's just no stopping them. I mean, that's what it feels like at times, right? I do think these lawsuits will stick. The level of detail, these are a lot different than what happened in 2007. Don't get me wrong, their lobbyists could come in and still kind of undo everything, but the level of detail is there. My own personal view is I think companies like Purdue Pharma will be bankrupt in 2 years, or they'll find a way to sort of ring fence the OxyContin business and bankrupt that. and it's just unsurmountable. The amount of lawsuits they have is just out of control.
I actually called Maury Haley's office and said that I would like to get a lawyer for a lot of the moms and fathers have lost their children, and individually go after them too.
Yeah.
Not only, you know, at the government level.
But individual, yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, there could be a
What I
class
would
action
do, if
lawsuits.
I ever received any money from it, I would put it into treatment, as well as, sorry to say this, but to help parents bury their children.
Yeah.
Because who loses a child at 25 and has prepared for their death at that age?
No one. No, it's
You know, so a lot of cremations, one night we cremate, you know, and because they can afford to bury them.
yeah.
And a lot of these bodies are in morgues for the longest time until someone claims it. And
pays and wow.
so that's basically what I would like to see.
Yeah.
You know, that would be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you put your sort of your finger really on the issue, which is also funding, right? I mean, we just don't have enough funding to take care of this problem legitimately, right? I mean, we're talking about probably close to $500 billion, $500 billion a year needed to have recovery centers. I'm talking about federal recovery centers, and I actually have this crazy notion that if we just spent the money that it's costing us to incarcerate, right? Because there's all this whole, I mean, where they're just, as soon as you get caught, you're basically incarcerated for years or months, and then you're basically set up to fail because you're fighting the same case over and over again, right? If we took all those people that really needed help that have been incarcerated, right, and we just built real facilities, I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but real recovery facilities as sort of health services, I actually think it would be a wash in terms of costs, right?
And a possibility.
Because our jails, and I know Massachusetts is full of people who are being incarcerated.
Because of their addiction issues.
Exactly.
It's totally amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at a lot of these individuals that go into treatment, and when they come out, it's like there's no jobs.
No, there's none.
A lot of places won't hire someone that's just out of treatment.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of things you can do if that is the case. I mean, the American Disabilities Act is sort of out there to sort of protect people, and you're starting to see some of those issues being taken care of, but it's really hard. It's an uphill battle. I was at a talk probably about a month ago, and it was a panel at the Boston Medical Center, and there was someone there from the Department of Justice who handles cases revolving around American Disabilities Act. And a lot of treatment centers don't take people if they're on Suboxone, right? That's illegal, right? I mean, you can literally, I mean, they get away with it, but so the Department of Justice is actually going in and fining these people and making sure that it actually is not the case, right? So, but that's just new. I mean, that's just happening now in the last few months, but it's been going on for a while, right? And so I think we're starting to see some changes, right? I mean, and it's also, a lot of these things are kind of community-based. I mean, you're starting to see something like that. That's more of a federal kind of program because this guy he's Department of Justice is federal. So you are seeing some changes, but from a federal level, but not a lot, not a lot. A lot of what we're seeing, I think, is community-based, whether it's bills or getting some funding federally.
Mackie had said when we first came back from Washington, there was a round table at discussion at the Edward M. Kennedy Library, and he had said they're not even talking about addiction.
Wow.
In the political.
Yeah.
Well, that's sad.
It's sad.
Really
it's sad.
sad.
It's sad. So I mean, we have.
Is it because they're being paid off? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some of that. There really is. I mean, these a lot of these the pharma lobbyists are huge. I mean, you're talking about they pay out close to 15. I mean, you can see it on Open Secrets, and you can actually go to the website and find out who's getting paid and by who. And that's only, I think, the beginning of it, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that sort of falls outside of that in terms of campaign donations. So their reach is bigger than we think, and it's much stronger than we think. In fact, it's one of the largest lobbyist groups in the U.S. So unfortunately, that's what we're battling. But it's up to us, right? I mean, I think
we're already seeing that a lot of changes are happening, even as far as the voters.
Yes.
They're voting out people that have been in long-term positions because they want change.
They want change, yeah.
I mean, I want change.
Yeah. No, it is. You're starting to see it not just in voting, but also, I mean, last night was this episode of 60 Minutes. I'm not sure if anybody was able to watch it, with Mike Moore, and he is one of the attorneys going, and I think I mentioned this earlier, with the state of the attorney working with the Attorney General for Ohio to go after Purdue and the distributors, and what he talked about in terms of like really trying to, and he was also a big tobacco involved in that litigation, and was able to win close to $250 billion for the U.S. government from tobacco. What sort of changes the mentality or the success of some of these cases? And this is all coming up now, starting in March of next year and leading up to September of next year. A lot of these cases are going to be starting to be heard. Just the beginning of them is what he called the court of public opinion, and I think that's a great term, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where people like you and I can go out there, what our voice is, and raise hell, right? And say, okay, this is the court of public opinion. This is what we're going to do. We're going to start talking about these things openly on TV or with our friends, to say, this is a huge lobbyist effort, and we need to raise awareness with it. I'm not sure if that leads to kind of organized rallies around what's happening next year. And then on top of that, Joanne, we've got the presidential cycle coming up in 2020, and I think that's also a great place. We got New Hampshire right here. Maybe that's a place where we kind of raise awareness of what's going on, both in terms of funding and putting these guys behind bars where they should be. Mm-hmm. So I think the groundwork is there in terms of where our battlegrounds are going to be in terms of really voicing our opinions, and it's up to us to sort of get out there and really kind of organize. And we're already starting to reach out to organizations, not just in Boston, but we're talking to organizations and nonprofits all over the U.S. So that's been great in that sense. It's been really kind of a coming together. And I know Fed Up has been doing a lot of that. The people at Fed Up, they've done a phenomenal job over the last 9 years of raising awareness. But I think we need to get, now that we've got these sort of issues that are really kind of battle issues going forward, whether it's the MDLs coming up next year and also the presidential cycle, and getting some voices heard there. I think that those are the key kind of places for us to kind of start really voicing our opinion.
I think that you actually have a lot of. What do you do? Stay up all night?
I do. I really do. It's so crazy. We have, I have a fantastic partners right now. I mean, they're just phenomenal. I mean, I have two people kind of working on kind of our research. We've got, and it's sort of kind of coming together. It's just, we've got a guy who's, and they're all, these are all people that are, basically kind of donating their time and working with me. And it's just been phenomenal. I mean, there's a Cynthia, our head of research, has been doing this for studying Purdue Pharma and the pharmaceutical industry and lobbying for the last 8 years. I mean, it's just been incredible. And her background is phenomenal, right? So then she's retired. She's able to kind of dedicate her time. We've got another person working with her. We've got a graphics person. We've got a person who's working to kind of put a lot of this together for us in terms of the strategy. We've got a PR person who's working on the strategy as well. So
I'm totally amazed.
It's funny, like, and this has only been 6 months, right? And then we've got this whole network of kind of volunteers around us. And we're also trying to lend a hand to some of the other groups, right, to make sure that, their voice is heard and, coming together. And in fact, we're organizing a conference for a lot of the heads of these groups, to, kind of more like a think tank type thing. You know, what do we want to do? Do we want to concentrate on one or two things, or do we want to take action? You know, do we just want to watch from the sidelines? I don't think that's what we want to do. You know,
No, of course not.
we want to be involved.
We've been there in the sidelines for too
long, right? So this is our moment, and that's in January, the middle of January. That's been a lot of organizing going on, and so I've had to put my art. We're still kind of got my studio running. I have a great studio manager, but I've had to put that on the side for a little bit of time until January, until we get this conference out of the way, and then I'll get back to making more spoons. Well, we have some made. I was able to kind of make some before I kind of get it organized for this conference, but we'll probably do something later in the spring in terms of spoon. So
I am totally amazed.
Yeah, it's a full. I've never worked this hard. It's been crazy. You know?
No, but it's a worthwhile project.
Yeah.
You know, it's something we really do need to do more. So what you need to do is please contact your politicians, whether even write Trump.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The senators, the Congress. Tell them how you feel about the situation.
Yeah.
Your voice does matter.
Yeah.
And together we can accomplish a lot.
Exactly. That's what it is. It's the law of numbers, and I think, you know, look for us. We're going to be organizing a lot more events, I think, coming into next year, and I think we're going to hit the ground running next year.
They're starting to listen.
Yeah.
It took long enough, but they're starting to listen.
Yeah.
And do you know we only have like 4 minutes left?
Oh, great. Yeah, it's gone by so fast.
Well, you gave us a lot of information.
Yeah,
you know?
It's almost. I feel like I get on, and I want to just dump all this information that I've just, you accumulate over years and years, and then you start like, and then so we're actually trying to figure out a way to put it together in a way that sort of people can. You don't necessarily, because I'm not a lawyer, right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, the chemistry behind these things. I know what I know because I've read a lot of books. I've been interviewed. I interview people. I talk to them. I go to a lot of conferences on this stuff, and it's always hard to put it in kind of layman's terms. And so I think I'm going to try and figure out a way to connect the dots, right? Almost visually as well as sort of make it, almost in a summary. And because there's a lot of information out there. There's tons and tons of books on this, and if you want, you could read forever on it, and you'll actually, I think, end up pulling the hair out of your head because you'll realize how bad this situation is from a corporate greed, standpoint, and what we've allowed these guys to get away with. And
it's interesting. We only have a couple of minutes, but. When I went to a Learn to Cope seminar during the summer, there was 2 DEA agents that are no longer, and they were this close.
So you have to.
I know that one small little distribution center was getting 3 million pills. Yeah. For a small little community. Where are those pills going?
Yeah, 370 people probably, and that's the one I've heard a situation where you have 370 people living, and you've had 3 million prescriptions giving, right? I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that there's something illegally happening there, right?
Absolutely.
And the pharmaceutical companies who made the billions should have known. They should know, right? Who's watching this?
And then those 2 agents were let go.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting, isn't it?
That's the power of corporate greed. Power of corporate greed, and you sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist. I always do, but it's hard not to be, right? I mean, this is crazy stuff, and
absolutely. Well, we're going to have to say goodnight.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. It was a wonderful.
I'm so happy that you came, and not only did we talk about your spoon, we also spoke about all the things that are happening. And it's amazing how much is there. Yeah. And how much you've learned.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. I've learned a lot.
And people need to be aware of that. Yeah. And please watch it again. YouTube under Somerville Overcoming Addiction or Somerville Media. you can go under and watch Somerville Overcoming Addiction's previous, what do you call it, sessions.
Yeah, yeah. Or just Google it on YouTube, yeah.
That's
Or
right.
whatever, find it, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. No, thank you,
very,
thanks,
very
Joanne.
much.
It was a pleasure being here.
And I'd love to go in January.
Yeah, yeah.
So send
yeah.
me the invite.
I will. I'll get it out tomorrow morning. Thank you.